It's now 2 o'clock. Hello and welcome to the introductory webinar for recipients of the Digitizing Hidden Special Collections and Archives program. I'm Nikki Ferraiolo, Senior Program Officer at CLEAR. First of all, let us say congratulations. This is an extremely competitive program, and if you're here, it's because reviewers believed that this project and your work on it will make an important contribution to scholarship. So we're so excited to watch these projects progress over the coming months and years. So the purpose of today's webinar is to walk you through the administrative processes associated with holding a hidden collections grant. At this point, many of you will be at different stages in your grant process. Hidden collections grants can start anytime between January 1st and June 1st, so some of you will be about halfway through your first year already, while others will just be starting out. We'll begin with a presentation, followed by time for questions at the end. We'll also be recording this webinar and uploading it to our website, so if you need to duck out early, you'll have access to this information later. So before we get started, we'd like to help everyone get oriented with the Zoom webinar space. Because of our relatively large group size today, all participants are muted. If a chat box is not currently displaying on your screen, you can hover towards the bottom of your Zoom screen to open it. The default is set to send chats to presenters, so be sure to change that setting using the drop-down menu to send the message to the entire group. Feel free to enter questions or comments at any point in the chat box. At the end of the presentation, we'll go over the questions. We may also share links here that will be captured as part of a recording for later reference. So we'd like to quickly introduce you to staff members on CLEAR's grants team. My name is Nikki Ferraiolo. Again, I'm Senior Program Officer here.
I am Joy Banks. I'm the Interim Grants Officer, and I'll be sharing part of the presentation duties with Nikki today.
I am Kristen Blair, and I'm the Program Administrator, and I'll be monitoring the chat today.
And I'm Krista Williford. I'm Director of Research and Assessment at CLEAR, and I'll just be supporting during the Q&A.
And we also have with us Louisa Quasigra, our Director of Development and Outreach here at CLEAR. And not with us today is Amy Luco, Director of Program Administration at CLEAR, but still an active part of the grants team. So today we'll be covering the following topics in the webinar. In part one, we'll provide an introduction to CLEAR as an organization. We'll then talk about CLEAR's publications and other CLEAR programs. And in part two, we'll talk about grant modifications, our reporting requirements, and additional communication channels. And then we will end with questions. And again, please feel free at any point to type your questions into the chat box.
We'll start with a brief introduction to CLEAR. For those who may be new to CLEAR, we are an independent, nonprofit organization that forges strategies to enhance research, teaching, and learning environments in collaboration with libraries, cultural institutions, and communities of higher learning. So what does that all mean? CLEAR takes on a number of roles, including publishing research, convening meetings, and running programs. We are an independent nonprofit, unlike our colleagues at NEH and IMLS. Our activities are not prescribed by the government. We're also not a private foundation. Our activities are not funded by an endowment, but rather by a combination of grants and sponsorships, which give us the flexibility to operate our programs a bit differently than the federal funders. We are also a very small operation in comparison with just 17 full-time staff members. The Digitizing Hidden Collections program is a re-granting program, which means the funds for your projects were awarded from a grant to CLEAR from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. CLEAR reapplies to Mellon for the funds to operate the Hidden Collections program and award new grants, so we can completely empathize with all of the work that you put in to get here. Along with these grants, the support of our sponsors helps cover many general operation costs at CLEAR. Our sponsors include university libraries, museums, and a wide range of other cultural heritage institutions. Very little of what we do, the Hidden Collections program included, would be possible without our sponsors. We know that many recipients are coming from sponsor institutions, so thank you for helping us do this work. If your institution does not yet sponsor CLEAR and would like to learn more about sponsorship, do let us know, and we'd be happy to put you in touch with our Director of Development and Outreach, Louisa Quazagra. CLEAR has long been known for its free and open publication series, also known as its Burgundy books. And while our scope of operation has expanded to include more programmatic activities, we still have a core emphasis on research. CLEAR has published on a range of topics, including but not limited to audio archiving, library spatial design, publishing, data management, discovery, digital preservation, and much more. One publication we'd like to highlight is displayed here, Innovation, Collaboration, and Models. This was the capstone publication of our Cataloging Hidden Special Collections and Archives program, the predecessor of our current digitization program, and it's meant to share the models and lessons learned from grantees between 2008 and 2014. This volume consists of a series of papers from a symposium and unconference held in March 2015 and is available for free on our website. Thinking ahead, we have plans to host a similar symposium for the Digitizing Hidden Special Collections and Archives grant program in the fall of 2020. As you are working on your projects, you may want to think about how you might share any outcomes or lessons from your colleagues at this symposium in the future. In addition to Hidden Collections and our publication series, CLEAR runs a number of other programs. Here's just a sample of some of the other things we do. Some of you may be familiar with our Recordings at Risk Regranting program, focusing on preservation of at-risk, high scholarly value audio, audiovisual, and film recordings. Recordings at Risk offers smaller grants over shorter periods of time. Our postdoctoral fellowship program places recent PhDs in academic libraries and other host institutions to strengthen connections among collecting institutions, technology, and current research. Our Mellon Dissertation Fellows support graduates in the humanities and social sciences conducting pre-dissertation research in archives and special collections around the world. We're also involved in the Leading Change Institute, which is the successor program to the Frye Leadership Institute, and is a boot camp for leaders in higher education with an emphasis on issues in the information sector. One of our newer endeavors is the Digital Library of the Middle East. The DLME aims to create a digitally based, internationally shared inventory of cultural artifacts that includes detailed descriptions and images and confirms objects' ownership and legal status. And finally, some of you may be familiar with the Digital Library Federation. The DLF is a robust, diverse, and inclusive community of practitioners who advance research, learning, social justice, and the public good through the creative design and wise application of digital library technologies. While CLEAR is its parent organization, DLF's work is supported by its own member institutions. This support enables the DLF to plan events like the DLF Forum and foster working groups that advance the field of digital librarianship. For those who may be interested, this year's DLF Forum will take place in Las Vegas from October 15th through the 17th. Many of CLEAR's programs, the Digitizing Hidden Collections program included, intertwine with the DLF's mission. Now that you know who we are, we will move into a discussion about some key information for you as the latest recipients of Digitizing Hidden Special Collections and Archives grants. This next section will cover grant modifications, reporting requirements, and an overview of channels of communication. Nikki?
Thank you, Joy. So although we hope and expect that project activities listed in the approved proposal will be executed and as described, we understand that unanticipated issues can arise, which may require that you deviate from the original plans you submitted. Many of these changes will be minor and won't require pre-approval from CLEAR. For instance, a change in non-PI project staff or small shifts in budget expenditures. Changes along these lines can be addressed in a project's next narrative and financial report to us. However, changes that affect the underlying terms of the grant must receive approval by CLEAR. Examples include changes to project dates, particularly the project end date, changes to principal investigators, changes to the collections being digitized, and significant budget reallocations. On this slide, you can see some screenshots from our recipient resources page on our website, where you can find the information covered in this section. No-cost extension requests are exactly what they sound like: a request to push back the project end date and the final report deadline without requesting additional funding. These may be requested in the case of unforeseen project delays, such as a prolonged personnel search due to staff turnover, or delays caused by institutional infrastructure issues. No-cost extensions should be requested between 1 and 3 months prior to a project end date. The reason we ask you to wait until these final months is that only one no-cost extension may be granted per project, and we have found that requests made closer to the end date provide more accurate estimates of the amount of extra time that's actually needed. It's important to note that extensions cannot be granted for projects whose end dates have already passed, so I cannot emphasize enough the importance of paying attention to this date. It's also worth noting that the project end date comes before your final report deadline, since some people have been confused about this in the past. To request an extension, you should send an email to hiddencollections@clear.org that includes, first, an explanation outlining the reasons behind the request. Second, a revised project plan, including an updated timeline. This plan and timeline should cover your entire project period from the start date to your new proposed end date. And finally, a revised budget using our grant modification financial template. When submitting a no-cost extension request, it's important to demonstrate consistency with the original proposal in terms of goals, scope, collections, and approach. It's usually a good idea to use the related sections of your original proposal as your starting point. In some instances, these can even be used as templates. Although you noted, if you noted any changes in your interim reports, you should point to them in your no-cost extension request to show continuity. If one of the principal investigators changes during the period of the grantee must inform CLEAR immediately via email. The letters that you submit to us don't have to be long, but they should include the following components. They should be on organizational letterhead. They should come from the head of the institution or department, if you are at a large institution. They should provide the name and title of the proposed new PI and the date the change will become effective. And they should also provide, along with it, you should provide a CV for the new principal investigator. If you wish to allocate funds in a manner different than the original budget approved by CLEAR, you should email us with a brief description of the substance and extent of the proposed modification. Be sure to include the amount of funds you would like to reallocate in your request. So this alone may be sufficient, but if we determine that additional documentation is necessary, we'll invite you to submit a formal reallocation request, including a revised budget. If the reallocation request is very small, you do not need to receive approval from CLEAR. As a general rule of thumb, for smaller hidden collections projects, which by our definition are those under $200,000, CLEAR generally doesn't require notification for reallocations that amount to less than 5% of the project's total budget. However, for larger projects, those over $200,000, and really for all projects, you should contact CLEAR about any reallocations that are over $10,000. Again, this information can be found on the recipient resources page. Should we update any of our grant modification procedures, we'll post the most up-to-date information there for your reference. If you have a more complicated grant modification request, it can often be helpful to set up a time to have a phone call with a program officer prior to submitting your formal request to talk about potential issues. You can do this by writing to hiddencollections@clear.org to schedule a time to call.
Our next section is going to go over some of our reporting requirements. Recipients of the Hidden Collections Grant are required to submit reports according to the schedule outlined in each of your award letters. Your first report is due a year and 1 month after the start date of your project, and then each interim report after that is due exactly 1 year after the previous one. Your final report is then due 3 months after your project ends. This means we should be receiving one report from you each year. If your project is only 12 months, you will just submit your final report 3 months after the end date of your project. Your annual reports to CLEAR are a deeply important part of the agreement between our grantees, CLEAR, and our own funder, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. The Digitizing Hidden Collections staff compiles its own report on the Hidden Collections program each year, which we submit to Mellon on June 30th. This report also includes all of the reports we received from our recipients that year and communicates to Mellon the importance of the work that all of you are doing. CLEAR will accept reports for this program solely through an online form, which is linked to from our recipient resources page. Grantees are required to submit both narrative and financial reports on or before the due date specified in your award letter. If you don't have access to a copy of your letter and need to know your designated report dates or any other information related to your report, do let us know at hiddencollections@clear.org. You will also receive an email reminder from CLEAR around a month prior to the due date for each of your annual interim reports and around 3 months prior to your project's end date. Just a few more words on reporting. Reports are not only a way to help us keep up with your progress, but also a means for us to provide the best support to you as your project evolves. For instance, we may be able to suggest others in the hidden collections community who have faced similar challenges as the ones you report facing. Your reports can also help us to help you identify and mitigate potential issues in advance. For example, we may notice from your reports that you may need a no-cost extension and can remind you of that process. If you find that your report is likely to be late due to circumstances beyond your control, which we know happen, such as the surprise departure of a PI, let us know as soon as possible. We are glad to work with our grantees in these situations, but it's important that we hear about them before your report is overdue. We are currently in the process of migrating our grant management system from WiseHive, which you use to apply for your grant, to SurveyMonkey Apply, or Smaply. Because of this, we are unable to preview your specific reporting environment today, but rest assured we will provide you with all the resources you need in ample time to complete your first reports. Once we have set up the reporting space for our legacy WiseHive applicants, we will also provide resources to go over that system in greater detail. In the meantime, you can reference our collaborative Google Doc, which is available on the recipient resources page, which includes the questions you'll be expected to answer on the reporting form. These should not change between now and the time you submit your report, so you have the option to begin working on your draft report as early as you would like. For now, we will just briefly cover the components of the report so that you are prepared with the relevant information you need when the time comes.
So we're now going to do a quick walkthrough of the information you will be asked to include in your reports to CLEAR. The first section of our report covers general information about the project. It has the award reference number, project title, the institution or organization, PIs, and the contact information of the person submitting the report. Section 2 is where you can provide a narrative assessment of your project. The first thing we'll ask about are new internal and public developments. These are a series of checkboxes you can tick off. Internal developments include things like digitization metrics, the implementation of new workflows, protocols, etc. for digitization and description, the implementation of new tools or systems, and new donations and/or grant applications. We also want to hear about public developments, such as the creation of new blogs, social media accounts, websites, or content created for existing ones. Research guides, online or physical exhibitions, and news articles are things that we care about. Maybe the digitized materials are being incorporated into curricula somewhere. Perhaps there are publications arising from research using the digitized material. You'll also have a chance to summarize the project's goals and objectives during the reporting period and explain any changes or additions to your project plans. You can elaborate on the developments you've checked off above and any other significant accomplishments and outcomes of the project, both for your institution, your professional community, and the collections users. You can discuss challenges or setbacks you have experienced, whether expected or unexpected, and your strategies for addressing them. You can tell us about the wonderful individuals who have made contributions to the project and briefly describe the role that each has played. And finally, you can tell us about your outreach initiatives, future plans, and you can upload additional documentation related to the project, such as slides, workflows, training materials, assessment data, etc. The next section of the report asks for information about the quantity and types of materials you have digitized to date, as well as the files you have produced. Roughly 30 days prior to the deadline for your report, the principal investigators will be sent an individualized Excel template for submitting quantitative data about the project. The template will be pre-populated with the deliverables identified in the original proposal and the corresponding target numbers. This spreadsheet includes 3 worksheets: files created, materials digitized, and other accomplishments, which is optional. Grantees are expected to update this spreadsheet with the progress made in the given reporting period and can explain any information provided on the spreadsheet in the narrative section of the report. Additional instructions are contained within the file itself. In this section, you will also find a space for optional data contribution to the digitization cost calculator. This is a project by the Digital Library Federation Assessment Interest Group's Working Group on Cost Assessment. The calculator is a tool that runs on community-contributed data and provides estimates of time and cost to those planning digitization projects. Hidden Collections grant recipients have been invited to contribute data from their projects to help make the calculator more robust and reliable. If you are interested in contributing, you can let us know on your reporting form, and we'll share your information with Joyce Chapman, who works on the calculator and may follow up with you. You can also connect with Joyce on your own if you'd like to learn more about the initiative or get started contributing data sooner. She can be reached at joyce.chapman@duke.edu. The next part of the reporting form that I want to touch on is the financial assessment, which comes in 2 parts. The first is the financial narrative. In the financial narrative, you can comment on actual grant expenditures during the reporting period as they relate to your proposed budget. Every budget category should be addressed here, and if there are variances of 5% or more between the projected and actual spending, make sure to include a detailed explanation here. The second part is the financial report, which is an upload using the same budget and financial report form that you submitted with your proposal. The only difference is that you have both the budgeted and actual fields filled in this time instead of just the budgeted column. And you can see an example of what this form looks like here. When it comes time to submit your final report, as opposed to your interim reports, you will include a final project assessment, which has 2 components. The first is the final project narrative, which is an overall assessment of your project, including the most significant outcomes and challenges and the most valuable lessons learned. The second component of your final project assessment is where you get to point us towards your digitized collections. What we're looking for is the names and URLs of the catalogs, repositories, or services through which the digitized files and associated metadata have been made available. Currently, the plan is to ask for top or high-level links to the collections rather than individual items, though it's possible that we may eventually ask for a more specific accounting of the digitized files. This is an approach that we are piloting with our Recordings at Risk program at CLEAR.
The last part of our presentation covers communication. In order to facilitate communication both between CLEAR and recipients, as well as among all recipients, CLEAR has a closed online discussion community where we occasionally share program updates and information for Hidden Collections grant recipients. Grant recipients are also able to share questions and updates for others to see. All project staff are welcome to join this community and can request access by filling out the form linked to under Discussion Community on our Recipient Resources page or contacting program staff at hiddencollections@clear.org. CLEAR's website contains quite a lot of information for you as you move into your grant recipient role. Just as you may have used the resources of the applicant resources page during the grant writing process, we have a similar recipient resources page that we've talked about quite a bit today as you work through your project. Here you will find information on grant modification and reporting that we already discussed, and additionally, contact information for the CLEAR Grants team, templates, and information on citing CLEAR are all contained on this page. From this page, you can also find links to our funded project page and the registry, both of which may serve as resources for you as you implement your project. On the funded projects page, you can find descriptions of each of the projects that have been funded by the Hidden Collections program to date. If you have not already done so, please proofread the summary of your project that's currently posted there and send us any proposed changes. The Hidden Collections Registry is a public database with information about all of the collections that have been proposed for either cataloging or digitization through this program, as well as the Recordings at Risk program. It is currently a work in progress, but we hope to update the site soon. One future enhancement is adding additional resources to the listed funded projects so we can share links to your publications, documentation, blogs, social media, and more. The best way to contact us is through the Hidden Collections at clear.org email box. We also love to hear your progress reports. If you're sharing updates on Twitter, be sure to tag us using @ClearHC or #DigHC so we can retweet your posts, amplifying the reach of your updates. If there is something you would like to tweet and don't have the resources to do that, just email us at hiddencollections@clear.org. Finally, one last resource we'd like to share is the Digitizing Special Formats Wiki. This is a project of the DLF and contains a growing collection of resources about planning and executing digitization projects. If there are additional resources you think would be helpful to include on the guide, email the editors at digiwiki@clear.org. We want to thank you all for joining us today. We know that we've covered a lot of material. We do have plenty of time left for questions, so if you'd like to ask anything, we'll just take a few moments to allow you to type that into the chat box. Okay, we have a question from Jason. Would it be helpful for you if I include images or video recordings highlighting work done? So for example, images of translators discussing digitized content or me presenting at SAA.
That's a great question, Jason. This is Nikki again. Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing that would be great to have in your additional documents upload. None of this is required, but we always love to see examples of the work done. It's helpful for us in kind of understanding what you're talking about in the narrative portion of your report. So definitely keep us posted if that's how you would like to communicate that. I'm sure this would be helpful for us in understanding what you're accomplishing.
So Nikki, one of the things I know that a few of our recipients have questions about is how do you actually cite CLEAR? Do we have communication guides? What are some of the rules about press releases?
Yeah, that is a great question. So as of last year, our communications office has actually published a guide that you can find on our website for how to acknowledge CLEAR. We also have logos that you can use and that you can download if you want to use them in your own press release when you're mentioning CLEAR. We ask that if you do mention the Hidden Collections program in any of your press releases, that you just quickly contact us first and let us take a quick look at it just to make sure that the program is being represented accurately. We generally take a very light touch and don't request many edits, but we do appreciate it if you share those with us. And Kristen's going to kind of find our acknowledgement guidelines and post them in the chat group shortly so that you'll have access to those. And I know many of you have been through the press release process with us. So thank you to everyone who ran those by us in December.
I don't know if there's any other questions, Nikki, that you've seen often that we want to address. I know that this webinar usually doesn't have a lot of questions since you don't really know what to ask yet.
Sometimes we get questions about the CLEAR's, the notice in CLEAR's award letter that says that funds, you're encouraged to keep funds in an interest-bearing account. Some grantees kind of miss that because they read the award letter quickly. And so if you are not planning on holding funds in an interest-bearing account, we ask that you submit a letter explaining why. Otherwise, when you submit your financial report, we ask that you do report interest that is earned on the grant. And the interest that you earn, you are free to spend if you have a use for it. Otherwise, you can return that back to us in the Mellon Foundation. And then otherwise, as questions come up, you can always just email us directly at hiddencollections@clear.org. We're also happy to speak with you over the phone if that's more helpful. Please stay in contact with us. As Joy mentioned, we're pretty active on Twitter. So if you tag us in your tweets, we'll often retweet you or like your tweets and help amplify you to the extent possible because we're proud of your work and want to help show it off.
Okay, so I'm not really seeing any additional questions, and I'm pretty sure that we didn't have any that came up during our presentation. So I just want to take a moment and thank everyone for being with us today. We will be posting the recording and slides soon to our recipient resources page. And as Nikki said, if you have any additional questions that come to your mind later at any time, feel free to email us at hiddencollections@clear.org. We really look forward to working with you and hope you all have a great day.